Hal Jordan just found out something that no Green Lantern ever wants to hear. He is not the only one wearing the ring anymore. John Stewart is standing right next to him, training under the same light, carrying the same power, and nobody is calling him a backup for long. The moment Sinestro looks Hal dead in the eye and asks him to say what John Stewart actually is, the whole tone of this trailer changes. This is not a simple training story. This is the beginning of replacement, and Hal Jordan already knows it. The Lanterns trailer opens on something that feels almost too ordinary for a Green Lantern story. A door creaks open, Kent's music rolls in, and someone tells Junior it is time to get up. For a second, it feels like a regular morning. Then everything shifts. John Stewart is introduced as a man still figuring out what he has just stepped into, calling himself a space cop, only to immediately correct himself and admit he is just being trained. That single line is doing a lot of work. It tells us this is not the story of an already confident Lantern. This is the story of someone new stepping into Hal Jordan's world, and Hal Jordan is the one training him. Hal wastes no time. New lesson, take the ring, fly. It sounds simple, almost casual, but the way John hesitates, the way he asks, just fly, before catching himself and saying fly, please, tells us he is still adjusting to power he does not fully understand yet. This is where the trailer plants its first quiet seed. John Stewart is not arriving as an equal. He is arriving as a student. But students do not stay students forever. And anyone who knows how these stories work knows exactly where this is heading. Then the trailer throws in a detail that most viewers will miss on a first watch. John Stewart is described as the backup quarterback. For now, that phrase, for now, is not filler. It is a warning. Whoever wrote the trailer wanted the audience to sit with that phrase and start asking questions. Backup for now, not backup forever. If John Stewart is being set up as backup only temporarily, then the real question becomes obvious. Who is he backup for, and what happens when he stops being backup and starts being the main event? From here, the trailer pulls us into the actual threat of the season. Hal Jordan is convinced something serious is happening, telling John that the victims they are looking into are going to end up being alien. When John pushes back and asks what that is based on, Hal simply says he has a feeling. It is almost funny how casually he says it, and the trailer even lets that reaction land with a small gasp, as if to say, yes, he really is running on instinct here. But instinct is not something to laugh off in this universe, especially not when it turns out to be right, because it is right. This is not a small alien problem. This is described as a threat no one has ever seen before. And the moment gunfire cuts through the scene, we understand this is not a metaphorical danger. It is real, immediate, and violent enough to interrupt the music entirely. Then comes the word that changes everything, Manhunters. Hal Jordan asks directly where someone even heard that name, and the answer he gets back is not comforting in the slightest. Manhunters are described as the most dangerous beings to ever exist in the galaxy, capable of taking the form of any species. Which means the enemy could already be standing next to them, and neither Hal nor John would even know it. Guy Gardner's brief appearance only adds more weight to the danger. He does not waste time explaining lore. He simply states that an army is coming to put them down. Not to fight them. Not to test them. To put them down. That phrasing alone should tell longtime fans of this universe that whatever is coming is not treated as a manageable threat by the people who know it best. And that brings us to Sinestro, whose presence completely reframes everything we have just watched. The moment he asks Hal Jordan if he resents if he resents John Stewart, the tension in this trailer stops being about aliens and starts being personal. When Hal insists the ring has always been his and that Jordan is simply keeping it warm, that is not a throwaway line. That is Sinestro planting doubt directly into Hal's mind, forcing him to confront a question he clearly has not wanted to answer out loud. And when Sinestro pushes further, asking Hal to admit what John Stewart actually is, Hal's answer lands like a gut punch. My replacement. 2 words. No hesitation strong enough to stop them. That is where this section leaves us, with Hal Jordan finally saying out loud what the entire trailer has been building toward from the very beginning. Once Hal Jordan says the word replacement out loud, this trailer stops being a simple introduction to a new hero and turns into something much heavier. Because here is the thing fans need to sit with. Hal Jordan is not a character who scares easily. He is not the type to panic over a new recruit joining the ranks. Green Lanterns train new members all the time. That is normal. That is expected. That is part of what the Corps does. So if Hal is willing to say the word replacement without flinching, without laughing it off, without brushing past it the way he brushes past almost everything else in this trailer, then something about Jon Stewart's arrival feels different to him. Something about this specific pairing does not feel like a routine assignment. And that difference is exactly what this trailer wants us to notice. Think about how the scene is built. Sinestro is not asking a random question out of nowhere. Sinestro is someone who understands the Green Lantern Corps on a level most characters in this universe never reach. He was one of the greatest lanterns to ever exist before everything about him changed. So when Sinestro looks at Hal and asks if he resents Jon Stewart, he is not fishing for gossip. He already suspects the answer. He is forcing Hal to say it out loud because Sinestro understands something that Hal has not fully admitted to himself yet. That doubt, once spoken, cannot be unspoken. And the moment Hal says my replacement, Sinestro has exactly what he needs. Whether that is emotional leverage, a wedge to drive between two lanterns, or the beginning of something far more manipulative, the trailer leaves that open. But it plants the idea clearly enough that audiences are meant to start speculating. Now let us talk about Jon Stewart, because his placement in this story is doing more than just introducing a new character. Longtime fans of Green Lantern lore already know Jon Stewart is not some random rookie pulled out of nowhere. He has always been one of the most respected lanterns in the wider mythology, someone capable of holding his own against threats that would break most other ring bearers. So when this trailer chooses to introduce him as unsure, hesitant, still learning how to fly, still figuring out what the ring even means, that is a deliberate choice. It is not accidental. It is setting up a transformation. The trailer wants us to see Jon Stewart at his most uncertain point specifically so that his growth over the season feels earned. Which means the backup quarterback for Now line is not just foreshadowing his rise. It is foreshadowing exactly how far he has to climb, and how much Hal Jordan's presence in his life, whether as mentor, rival, or eventual replacement scenario, is going to shape that climb. And this is where the Manhunter reveal becomes so important to the bigger picture. The Manhunters are not just another alien threat thrown in to raise the stakes. In the wider mythology, Manhunters carry a history that ties directly into the Green Lantern Corps itself, into questions about justice, about whether emotion or pure logic should guide the people meant to protect the galaxy. If this trailer is introducing Manhunters this early and framing them as beings capable of impersonating any species, then the show is likely setting up a season where trust becomes the central problem. Not just trust between Hal and Jon, but trust across the entire Corps. If a Manhunter can look like anyone, then every character introduced from this point forward becomes suspect. Every ally could secretly be an enemy. Every warm interaction could be a trap. That single detail, shape-shifting enemies capable of blending into any species, is exactly the kind of premise that turns a straightforward hero story into a slow-burning thriller. Now factor in Guy Gardner's line about an army being sent to put them down, not defeat them. Not capture them, put them down. That phrasing carries weight because it tells us the threat coming is not being treated as something reasonable people negotiate with. It is being treated as something that has to be eliminated before it spreads. And if Manhunters really are capable of infiltrating in disguise, an army built specifically to hunt and destroy anything connected to that threat suggests the coming conflict will not be clean. It will not be a simple battle with clear sides. It will likely involve moments where the heroes themselves are accused of being the threat. Moments where paranoia becomes just as dangerous as the actual Manhunters. and moments where Jon Stewart, still new, still uncertain, still trying to prove himself, becomes an easy target for suspicion simply because nobody fully trusts him yet. This is where Hal Jordan's role becomes even more complicated. If Hal is already wrestling with the idea that Jon might be his replacement, and the Corps is suddenly dealing with a threat that plays on trust and identity, Hal is placed in an impossible position. Does he defend Jon Stewart, the man he privately fears is replacing him, when suspicion falls on him? Or does that private fear quietly influence how quickly Hal is willing to trust him? The trailer never answers this directly, but it does not need to. It simply needed to place both pieces on the board, the personal tension and the external threat, and let the audience connect the dots themselves. That is exactly the kind of setup that keeps viewers speculating episode to episode. Because the emotional stakes and the physical stakes are tied together from the very first trailer. Then there is Sinestro's presence itself, which deserves its own layer of speculation. Sinestro does not appear in these stories by accident. Every version of this character carries the same underlying idea, someone who once believed in order so strongly that he was willing to abandon the Corps' rules to enforce it his own way. If Sinestro is already circling Hal Jordan this early, planting doubt about Jon Stewart, asking pointed emotional questions designed to unsettle rather than comfort, it is worth asking what Sinestro actually wants out of this. Is he testing Hal to see if he is still fit to wear the ring? Is he testing Jon Stewart indirectly, using Hal as a mirror to understand the new Lantern before ever speaking to him directly? Or is Sinestro simply doing what Sinestro always does, finding the cracks in someone's confidence and pressing on them until they widen? Whatever the answer, his presence in the trailer signals that this season is not just about an external alien threat. It is about internal fractures within the Corps itself, fractures that Sinestro seems more than capable of exploiting. And then the trailer shifts tone entirely with the oath. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. Hearing Hal recite this here, right after everything we just witnessed, the doubt, the tension with Sinestro, the looming Manhunter threat, gives the oath a different weight than usual. It does not feel like a triumphant reminder of Hal's power. It feels almost like Hal reminding himself who he still is, despite everything challenging that identity around him. Which raises an important question for viewers going into the season. Is this oath being framed as Hal reclaiming his purpose? Or is it being framed as the last version of Hal Jordan before everything about his role in the Corps changes for good? Finally, the trailer ends on something almost jarringly casual. Hal simply asking, "How about a beer?" After everything building throughout this trailer. The tension with Sinestro, the looming Manhunter threat, the emotional confession about replacement, ending on something this ordinary is clearly intentional. It suggests that despite the heavy themes coming, this show still wants to hold on to moments of humanity between its characters. Whether that beer is shared with Jon Stewart, easing the tension between them, or with someone else entirely, that small human moment tells us this story is not going to be relentlessly dark. It is going to balance real emotional stakes with the kind of grounded, everyday connection that makes these characters feel real. And that balance, tension, and humanity sitting side by side might end up being exactly what defines this entire season. Let's slow down for a moment and really dig into why this trailer chose to open on something as small and domestic as a door creaking open and someone telling Junior it is time to get up. On the surface, it looks like nothing more than a quiet transition into the main story. But trailers rarely waste their opening seconds on something meaningless, especially not a trailer this tightly constructed. That opening line, delivered with tense music already playing underneath it, tells us that even the most ordinary moments in this world are no longer safe. Somebody is being pulled out of a peaceful morning and into something much bigger. And the fact that the music is already tense before we even understand what is happening suggests the show wants us uneasy from the very first second. This is not a trailer interested in slowly building comfort before pulling it away. It wants discomfort baked in from frame one, And that tells us something about the tone the entire season is likely going for. Now think about who Junior might actually be. The trailer never confirms it outright, and that ambiguity alone is worth paying attention to. Depending on how the story is structured, this could be a nickname for Jon Stewart himself. Someone newer, someone still finding his footing. Someone who other characters might affectionately or dismissively refer to as the rookie of the group. If that is the case, then the opening line is not just a throwaway moment. It is quietly reinforcing the same theme we see later with the backup quarterback for now line. Once again, Jon Stewart is framed as someone still growing into his role, someone others do not yet take fully seriously, at least not yet. And if the show is intentionally stacking these small moments on top of each other, waking him up, calling him Junior, treating him as backup, it is building toward a very specific payoff. A moment later in the season where all of that changes and Jon Stewart stops being treated like the little brother of the group. Let's go back to the ring itself for a second, because there is something worth unpacking in how casually Hal introduces it. Take the ring. You fly, just fly. That short exchange might seem like a simple training beat, but it reveals a lot about how power is treated in this specific take on the mythology. Hal does not walk Jon through some long, detailed explanation of how the ring works, what it can do, or what dangers come with it. He simply hands over incredible cosmic power and tells him to use it. That casualness could be intentional storytelling, showing us that Hal himself either does not fully understand the ring's mechanics either, or that he trusts Jon enough, even this early, to hand him that responsibility without hesitation. Either interpretation is interesting. If Hal genuinely does not fully grasp everything the ring can do, that opens the door for surprises later in the season. Moments where Jon Stewart discovers abilities or limitations that catch even Hal off guard. And if Hal does understand the ring completely and is simply choosing not to overwhelm Jon with information all at once, that tells us Hal is being deliberately hands-off as a mentor. Maybe even testing Jon's instincts rather than his knowledge. This ties directly into something bigger happening beneath the surface of this trailer.